complement of the season. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we keep you updated with all that's happening from the Nigerian newspaper. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham. I'll be doing the program with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
And to our viewers at home or wherever you're watching us, remember you can also be part of the conversation by dropping your comment on Facebook and on YouTube, and then you can also, like, comment, and share with other of your friends so they can also follow the program and also see what is happening in the country. We'll be going straight into the paper, and Rachel will take us through the first paper.
On Nigerian Tribune, the big story: no price too high to pay for peace, coming from Fubara. Falana Clark says Abuja resolution unconstitutional. No way back for 25 defected lawmakers. A statement from PDP. You can find details on page 2 and 10. Zenith Bank listed in World Finance exclusive list of 100 top global companies in 2023. Crime alert: boss back 75 years imprisonment over investment scam. Ribadu loots in bar over fight against insecurity in Enugu State. You can find details on page 10. No provision for census in 2024 budget statement from the Senate. Give Tinubu real feedback from Nigerians, Fayemi tells Ganduje. You can find details on page 28, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Nation newspaper, Shaibu Adeni's foster relationship with Obaseki. You can find detail of that on page 27. EFCC now to beam searchlight on councils. No dividend at the grassroots. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. Makinde canvasses peace as Son gets staff of office. Zenith Bank among the 100 top global companies. And we have expect full manifestation of my reforms next year. Tinubu tells Nigerians. You can have that story inside the paper. Coming from the CBN, banks breach loan limit regulation. Recapitalization will aid $1 trillion economic target. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. And the big story here: no price too much to pay for peace in Rivers, says Fubara. And he actually said this during expressing it during the third convocation and 6th Founders Day ceremony of the PAMO University of Medical Science in Rivers State. And he have actually talked about the fact that whatever it would take for peace to reign in Rivers State, he is ready to actually pay the price for peace to reign in the state. So you can continue to find more detail of that story in the paper. And we have a writer following that story that says PDP Clark reject peace terms. You can find more detail of that in the paper as well. Federal lawmakers to pass budget December 30th. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. And also we have the last story here that says ASU slam VCs. You want to know why they did that? You can do well to follow up that story inside the paper. And that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, in Rivers State, PDP Clark fault Tinubu's peace deal. APC slams opposition. Domestic borrowing jumps by 134%, rises to 52 trillion naira. Don't depend on Villa for feedback, Fayemi advises Tinubu. The big story on the paper: cash crunch. NLC warns federal government of mass protests. Again, banks cut withdrawals. CBN fresh disbursement fails to reach banks. Southwest Bank source cash from northern branches. Nigerians running out of patience. Can't bear current pains, Labour tells Tinubu's government and CBN. You can find details on page 29. Sanwo-Olu opens Red Line Rail flyover project, 500,000 passengers daily. Protect your database from hackers, IG advises banks. Driver charged with manslaughter after crash in Lagos. You can find details of this story on page 4 and 5. Makinde films oversuit against Shaun threatens litigants. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, $19 billion Dangote refinery gets another 1 million barrel of crude oil. Detail found on page 19. Zenith Bank listed on World Finance exclusive list of 100 top global companies. And on banditry, gunmen abduct Taraba chief. 2 police officers and 13 others. Supreme Court verdict, I'm not broken, I will be victorious. This is coming from Nnamdi Kanu. Last week, Friday, the actually was the hearing, and then we're seeing that the court has said that he must actually go through all the trial, treason, and all of that. So here we're seeing Nnamdi Kanu saying that he is not broken, but rather he will be victorious. So you can read more of that story on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. No price too big for peace in Rivers, coming from Fubara. PDP clerk Ijon Nation. Rivers elders reject Tinubu's peace accord. PDP says no remedy for 25 former Rivers lawmakers. Urges them to prepare for fresh polls. Clark threatened legal action against Tinubu. We are yet to recognize the G27 Rivers legislators, coming from the ASAF. Says Fubara was ambushed in Aso Rock resolution, dictatorial, one-sided, unacceptable. And we are having Nadiko urges Rivers people to reject the resolution. You can find detail of that story on page 5. Also, we are seeing on Naira scarcity unacceptable, coming from Labour. You can find that on page 9. And on the Kaduna bumping, anyone found culpable will be punished, coming from the CDS. We have a column for Efa Babalola you can find inside the paper, and also on sport on page 31. The picture story here, we can see Delta Government, NNPCL, UTM Offshore Sign Pack. You can find more detail of that story in the paper, and that's all on Vanguard newspaper.
On Daily Sun, Oshomole indicts Buni and Adamu, says Yobe governor-led caretaker committee squandered party savings, reveals how ruling parties spent billions to win Kwara, Imo, Ogun, Guba in 2019. Accuses ex-Nasarawa governor ESCO members of paying themselves with generated revenue. You can find details on page 28. And on insecurity, Ribadu Lut Umba as governor promises tougher measures against criminals. PDP clerk rejects terms of Fubara wicked truce. 8-point resolution undemocratic, one-sided, unacceptable, says elder statesman. A court dangerous, coming from Sani. G20, 7 no longer lawmakers, statement from the opposition party. We aim at making Nigeria's upstream sector investment destination, rather investors' destination. We aim at making Nigeria's upstream sector investors' destination. This is coming from the NUPRC boss. Comments the Sun for objective reporting. Details can be found on page 6. Makinde presents staff of office to new sound of Obama, so you can find details on page 29. And on budget, federal government gives zero allocation to 2024 census. NLC knocks federal government as cash crunch worsens. NSA asks EFCC to track proceeds of kidnapping and terrorism. And in Lagos State, government to roll out 50 electric buses, 100 CNG vehicles. Opens Fort Bridge as red line needs completion. You can find more details on page 28. And at the downside of the paper, Zenith Bank listed in World Finance 100 for 2023. You can find more details on page 2. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On First News newspaper, still on River State, Clark accuses Tinubu of favoring Wiki. And still on Rivers crisis, here we are seeing PDP reject Asu Rock resolution, insists defector lawmakers have lost seats, demand a fresh poll to replace them, vows to sanction Wiki, and others say FCT minister not above the party. Still on Rivers crisis, Fubara breaks silent on Tinubu's broken peace, says no price is too much for peace to reign. And Rich, I remember when I was reading it on the Nation newspaper, I said that he actually did not say this during the peace accord. Rather, he said this during the third convocation in his state while they were graduating, medical students and other medical courses that actually graduated. And he said the fact that he has increased the number of those who will be getting the scholarship from the state from 100 to 150. So I wonder why our papers are having this story alongside, maybe just shortly after the peace accord when this is happening. But nevertheless, I mean, it is important that we see that the governor is trying all that he can to make sure that, you know what, no matter what it will take me, I need to have peace in the state, because we've said this a number of times concerning the rivers crisis, in the fact that the people that will suffer eventually are the citizens of that state, are the indigenous of that state, because a lot needs to be going on. We need to see bills being passed. We need to see a lot of things happening, governance going on, and the likes of it. I mean, local government needs to be taken care of, and a lot of things need to be happening in the state. We should be having political issues interfering with governance in the state. And here we're seeing, you remember yesterday during the afternoon show when we were talking about the fact that, a lot of people are frowning on the fact that the president do not have the constitutional right to actually interfere in what is happening in Rivers. And here we're seeing Falana have said that, Robert Clark, the senior advocate, also have said that. A number of people are coming out to say that, the president shouldn't have intervened in that thing. I mean, he was supposed to call his minister to order to actually stop interfering with what is happening there, because you are still an indigene of Rivers State. Nevertheless, nobody will stop you from going home. But then you shouldn't be that you will actually cross your own jurisdiction to interfere with what somebody else is doing in the state. And we mentioned the 8-point agenda yesterday, if you will recall, where we said that it looked one-sided to some extent, because we're seeing that it seems as if the governor was being boxed, and we're seeing a lot of elder statesmen also saying the same thing. The fact that the governor of Rivers State was actually being ambushed in the Aso Rock, and he actually didn't have a choice or to sign it. But you remember when we said it's one thing for you to sign it, there's another thing for it to be implemented, because we're saying that even elder statesmen in the state are saying this is unacceptable, and INEC must conduct fresh elections, because according to the constitution, once you defect to a party, I mean, every party have one crisis after another. APC had theirs.
You remember during the crisis. We're seeing where Oshomola is now talking about the past chairmans and the ESCO spending money. Every party have their crisis, Sele. And that is the part where we clearly said, why are you now leaving PDP and pointing hands at the problems that when you were there, you are also part of the problem. How didn't you fix it? And you're leaving because of problem that doesn't even, what is actually the problem? You haven't clearly stated what the problem is precisely, and you left and you're pointing a finger from behind and from afar, and you were part of the problem. You created the problem and you are supposed to fix it, because there's no party that don't have problems. It's all about fixing it and all of that. And I believe in the case of Rivers, we said a lot about those agreements, and it doesn't solve any problem as it is, because we can see a continuity that, what, PDP is saying you have no place in our place. Those are the real problems confronting Rivers, whether we like it or not. Now, what are these lawmakers? PDP is insisting, and then it's the problem is still out there. The agreement, of course, it doesn't look like it actually is one-sided, and it just feels like problems being swept under the carpet. But eventually there will be need for thorough cleaning, and you will still meet that dirt waiting for you there. And that is just what it is. There's no solution so far. It just feels like, let's just do this for peace and let's leave it that way. But there are still underlying problems, and we are still seeing them surfacing, because if it was a solution, it should have died down and the problem could have been solved. But it's still out there and it's unconstitutional in a lot of ways. Who the president should have called to book and to say, behave yourself, is his minister. You are now FCT and minister. You have no business in the politics and the governance of River State. Are you an indigent? Yes, but you're no longer the governor. You don't have power over rivers anywhere. Have you become an elder statesman? Yes, you do. Your opinion should matter, but you are not the one ruling the state anymore, and you should face the job that I have put you to do. That is where I believe who the president should have called to order, and not a truce that feels one-sided and doesn't solve any problem. But we'll watch out and see how things unfold in Rivers State.
Of course, Rachel. Still on First News newspaper, we have other story where we have on Naira scarcity. Nigerians tired of excuses, fix the problem now. NLC tells the federal government. Kaduna bumping probe report will be out soon, coming from the defense chief. Still on the First News newspaper, we have Simon Lalong officially resigns as Tinubu's minister. You can find more of that also still on First News. There is tension between Obaseki and I. This is coming from Shaibu. We will end insecurity in 2024, coming from the federal government. I am in forefront of changing Nigeria. This is also coming from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. No allocation for population census in 2024 budget, says Senate panel. And we have Wiki orders removal of Abuja community for presidential threat. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. Lagos to roll out 50 electric buses, 100 CNG vehicles. You can find more detail of that story. We have some few picture story on the front page of the paper. Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde presenting the serve of office to the newly appointed son of Obomosho. We can also see his wife by his side supporting him. So you can look up that story more inside the paper. And I think that's all on First News newspaper. Let's look at the next paper, which is the Guardian newspaper as well.
On the Guardian newspaper, despite 9.56 trillion naira allocation in 5 years, 774 local government areas still underdeveloped. And we have total allocation 9.56 trillion, and then we have in 2019 we have this local government getting 1.66 trillion naira in 2020, 1.67 trillion in 2021, 1.71 trillion naira in 2022. We have 2.17 trillion, and then in 2023, 2.32 trillion naira. However, the question is, did all of these trillions of naira get to the local government? Because we are seeing how many states have refused to give the local government their autonomy, especially when it comes to their finances. So it's for one thing to say, despite 9.56 trillion naira allocation, is another thing to say, did they get all of that money? That is the question. Did the local government get all of that question? And clearly they haven't, because they haven't been in control of their finances for all of these years. Some local governments, some states, very few, and we still have a majority not. So I think it's one thing for us to have these stats, but then the question is, did this local government get it? Until for sure this local government, you're 100% sure that all of this allocation went to them, then that is when now we can go to the local government, this 774 local government in Nigeria, and ask, what did you do with the allocations that went to you directly? But until then, I believe the state government is still to answer why are the local government not developed despite having this much allocation coming to them.
Rachel, it seems as if you just got those words out of me, and then you actually, that is to see we share the same opinion on the issue of local government. I remember you and I have talked about the issue of the local government autonomy, financially, in their administration, in everything, where we see that governors over the years have been interfering. We saw the number of local governments in the whole of Nigeria that till date are being controlled by caretakers. Where you have not had elections at the local government areas. And questions will be, why are we not having elections there? Why don't we have chairmen, councillors heading various wards and local government? Why things still going on the way they are going? Why are governors bent on frustrating the effort of everywhere? Not only are we seeing governors interfering in the local government area, we're seeing governors interfering in the legislative, governors are interfering in the judiciary. Why don't you stick to your own part? You are an executive. Stay there, maintain your lead. But we keep seeing governors interfering, meddling with things that are not their business. And you know, sometimes when we talk like this, you just can't help to get emotional. Why do I say that, Rachel? Most of the development we're expecting to see are supposed to start from the local government area. Imagine if the roads are good from the local government down to this. You will have a problem with the fact that there is a hike in food prices. Why? Because farmers will have a very swift movement from the local government, because mostly that is where the farms are. They're not in the city. They are in the rural areas. How about you need to take a look at some of our secretariats in the local government area. Very few are actually looking very beautiful. A lot of them are dilapidated. Nobody is even taking care of them. You go there and see the local government workers. Rachel, if you are being posted as a core member to your local government area, you look down on that position. Why? Because you feel there's nothing to be, I mean, you can't do anything there rather than peeling granules and doing things that don't make sense. I'm sorry to sound this way, but that is how low we have brought down our local government areas. I mean, go to other developed countries. That is where things are happening.
That's where things happen.
That is where things are happening. But why are we having the reverse? I mean, looking at this money, Rachel, you would have been saying, wow, I'm supposed to be seeing a lot of things.
A lot.
But you go to some of our rural areas, there is no power.
Yes.
Go to some of our rural areas, there is no road. Go to some of our rural areas,
schools.
no schools. In fact, some of the schools
to write home about.
will look, I mean, what are we saying?
Yes.
So I'm just hoping that when we see figures like this on our papers, I'm expecting our leaders not to sleep on it. This is where I'm even expecting Labour to come out. NUPEC over there and the rest of them. What is happening? I mean, because those are the people in charge of local government and all of that.
Yes.
So I'm expecting to see a lot of things being done. And I'm just hoping there will be a push in our State House of Assembly. We need a total autonomy for our local government. It has been passed, so I wonder why the state is sitting on it. So to some extent now we can see even our State House of Assembly are frustrating their efforts as well.
They are.
So I'm hoping that beyond us seeing these things on our papers, I want to see a move. We're seeing that even census, Rachel. We're promised census before the end of 2023.
Nothing.
How many days to go? We have about 11 days to finish this year, and nothing. In fact, it's not even captured on 2024 budget. So when are we having census? So a lot of things need to be tackled in this country, and I'm hoping that, as we are saying it here, the right authorities and relevant authorities are listening to us, and they will do the right thing
hopefully.
eventually.
Still on the Guardian newspaper, tell Tinubu truth, not what he hears in Villa, Fayemi advises Ganduje. Bandits abduct police officers, monarch, pregnant woman, 13 others in Taraba. Telcos may lose subscribers as NCC orders total bar of unlinked SIMs. Police in Anambra nab couple who bought month-old baby for 30,000 naira. This is a sad one. You can find details on page 8. Falana Clark Rivers elders slam Tinubu's unconstitutional peace deal. Details can be found on page 6. NLC flames federal government over cash scarcity, seeks liquidity to meet demands. And that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On Matrix newspaper, Zenith Bank achieves distinction as sole Nigerian brand on the World Finance 100 listing for 2023. CBN plans recapitalization to fuel government $1 trillion economy ambition. You can find that on page 10. PDP denies merging talk with any political party, reiterates commitment to defending democracy and the rule of law. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. We're seeing the big story for the Matrix says fresh tension in Rivers. Why Tinubu can restate, Why Tinubu can restate 27 Rivers lawmakers that defected to the APC coming from Falana. Elder statement, Clark Hicks says Fubara was ambushed and intimidated. Fubara breaks silence saying no price too big for peace. You can find that in the paper. We are transforming Nigeria with the support of National Assembly coming from Tinubu. We saw that from last week. And then Tinubu Total Energies party yields fruit as French giant pledges $6 billion in Nigeria oil and gas investment. And on elections, Supreme Court reversed judgment on PDP Labour Party suit challenging Sanwo-Olu's victory. You can find that also in the paper. It's official. Simon Lalong confirmed exit from Tinubu's government. And coming from Edo State, fresh crisis builds as Shaibu reveals tension between himself and Obaseki. You can find that story inside the paper. And that's all on Matrix newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, Zenith Bank listed among 100 top global companies. I didn't order dress code for Niger workers. This is coming from Bago. You can find details on page 19. We have trending farmers, traders lament lingering cash crunch. And on numbers, Nigeria-China trade balance hit 7.54 trillion naira. You can find both details on page 2. Reps to probe Nigeria's $7 billion annual maritime loss. Bandits abduct 2 policemen, 28 others in Taraba and Sokoto. The big story, Rivers truths, Fubara bows ready to make more concessions. Says no price too much to pay for peace in Rivers. Clark declares peace pact one-sided. PDP insists Wike still party member not above sanctions. You can find more details on page 4. Oginiland gives condition for oil production. Court grants Mamu's request to see doctor. You can find details on page 18. Supreme Court hears Kano governorship appeal tomorrow. No provision for census next year coming from Senate. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
I wonder where the papers got the fact that the governor of Niger State actually gave a dress code. I mean, we're like, this is supposed to be a time where we should be promoting our own indigenous dress code rather than corporate. But he said he didn't order a dress code for that, so they could look up that. Let's take a look at Daily Independent newspaper. Fire me, asked Gandoji to tell Tinubu the truth state of the country. Zenith Bank listed on World Finance exclusive list of 100 top global companies in 2023. And the big story here, we have PDP reject Tinubu and others resolution on Rivers crisis. Say defected lawmakers can only be remitted through election. Insists INEC fixed date for fresh poll into 25 state constituencies. Clark says resolution unacceptable dictatorial threatened lawsuit. You can find that on page 29. Gunmen kidnapped Taraba monarch's son and a pregnant daughter and 18 others. Current cash crunch in Yelita disappointing coming from NLC. Reps set to pass 2024 budget December 30th. Governor Mba has fought insecurity to a standstill coming from Ribadu. How I was denied allocation for 6 months by Edo Deputy Governor. You can find more inside the paper. Extent of Naira devaluation to determine capital base of banks coming from the CBN. And NNPC Limited Total Energy signed Memorandum of Understanding on adoption of a methane detection technology. You can find more detail of that inside the paper. And that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, subscribers risk disconnection by February 8, 2024 upon failure to link NIN with SIM. Naira strengthens against dollar to 844.85 naira to a dollar at official market. I wonder how that is a strength. It is falling, and for some reason that's what
it has actually strengthened from 1,000 to 800.
It's still at the unofficial market, and then as at 2 weeks back we were having it at 817, meaning it went as high as 850, and now we're seeing at 844. This is not good news either way. I don't want our papers taking it and putting it on the positive side. This is still very high, and this is a free fall. You can find details on page 10. Still on Nigerian News Direct, 200 houses earmarked for demolition to make way for presidential fleet. Zenith Bank makes World Finance 100 listing for 2023. The big story on the paper, Wike orders working for opposition not above sanction, coming from PDP, and we hope to see them take action because they've been making this statement so far and there have been no sanction whatsoever to Wike. You can find details on page 3. Sanwo-Olu commissions Ikeja red line flyover, and there's a picture story showing that, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
No wonder the lawmakers are saying PDP is not saying anything about what is happening until the move comes, and then we see PDP. A lot of people are asking the question, the fact that what does Wike have that, I mean, he has not been sanctioned by the PDP. But I think it's just a matter of time we'll get to know the full gist of what is happening over there, Rachel. Well, I think at this moment we'd love to take a break so we can actually hear you when we come back from the break about a lot of story we're looking at. Elder Stigman and Falana Clark frowning on that peace truce that took place there. And there are quite a number of things we're seeing what is happening in Lagos State, and also the money that have been allocated, I mean, to the local government areas, yet they are not developed. So when we come back, we'll open the phone lines to hear you. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back if you're still tuning in, and the program is the Dailies. We've been looking at a number of stories on the paper, and this is your time where we will love to hear your own views about all the stories we have been taking from the paper this morning, ranging from politics down to even economy, education, NLC talking about the cash crunch, and quite a number of stories we took this the first half of the hour. So we'd love to hear what your own views are. The number to call is displayed on your screen. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us so we can actually hear you clearly here in the studio. I still have Rachel Tansy with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sally.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the New Telegraph newspaper. Cardoso is saying no going back on banking sector recapitalization. You can find detail of that. Vows to conduct regular stress tests on lenders. Detail of that story can be found on the front page and inside the paper. And on NIN to SIM linkage, on-link seems to be buried by February 2024. I mean, this is not the first time a warning have been about blocking people whose SIM have not yet been linked to their NIN. So if you're part of those people, please do not wait for the rush hour of February 2024 before you get to link your SIM card to your NIN. Still on New Telegraph newspaper, reps to pass the 2024 budget on December 30th. Umba has fought insecurity to a standstill coming from Ribado. And on flaunting LNG Delta NNPC Limited UTM offshore signed development treaty. No provision for population housing census in 2024 budget. You can look up that story on page 5 and 7. The big story for New Telegraph says Rivers crisis resolution. Tinubu's action directive overrule constitution, shake the country's democracy. Coming from Clark. Why the Abuja resolution can't stand by Falana. Fubara declares commitment to lasting peace as PDP insists 25 defected lawmakers can't return to the House. Robert Clark hinges Nigerians' problem on 1999 constitution, and I listened to him attentively, Rachel. And he said the fact that most of the problem we're having in Nigeria presently is because of the constitution. Because from the look of the things, I mean, we have a constitution, and it seems as if what we are facing presently is not being captured in the constitution. So there is a need for a review again of the constitution, because a number of things, I think we can also link it to what we saw Jega saying about our electoral act, where there is a need for a reform because of some of the things that happen in the various places, what INEC should do, how things should be done, the fact that you know what, before we have anybody being handed over certificate of return, let every court case die down before that, instead of us having people on seat and then they are being on seat and all of that. So I think there is a need to actually check out the constitution, because I mean, those constitutions were being written by people. So as well, looking at the situation happening around, it should also be captured, and that is what Robert Clark is saying as a senior advocate of Nigeria. But Richard, I've said it over and over, there's nothing wrong with some of our constitution, but there's wrong with the people that are supposed to obey the constitution. There is a law, there is a rule for you to follow. So I wonder why sometimes we feel it's applicable to other things and it's not applicable to other things. I mean, when it favors some people and then when it doesn't favor a particular situation, we do not make use of it. Personally, that is what I feel it is, because a number of things, when you look at the constitution, there is nothing wrong. We just try to make this complicated by saying we do not understand, or we interpret it when it suits a particular situation. But according to Robert Clark here, he says the fact that most of the problems we are facing as a country is the fact that it's been some of the way the constitution is being written, but we'll just hope to see better things.
Well, for me, Sele, I would 100% agree with Clark, because I keep saying that not only do the Nigerian constitution need reforming or amendment, we need a new one. Like we can, if it's possible, to literally scrap this 1999 constitution and make a new one, because the thing about law is that it evolves, everything evolves. And if you are too lazy to let law evolve, we are going to suffer. And why I say we're too lazy is that we don't have our judiciary, we don't have our lawmakers ready to sit down and do what is needful, Tele. Nobody wants to work in Nigeria, if we'll be honest, because if we want to work, we know that there is a lot of work, And doing a constitution is big work. Now, let's give an example to where there is so much work. When you say I'm looking at our electoral laws now, for example, to tell you how a law is supposed to capture even the tiniest thing, and our laws are not, because it is a problem, it must be captured. Okay, a party, you can defect and leave your party if there is a crisis. Now, your law is supposed to capture what crisis precisely is supposed to warrant for a defection. Not just because your chairman and the assistant chairman had an argument, and maybe they are having a misunderstanding, and then you pack your bags and leave, for example. There should be stated precisely, if this kind of crisis persists and for how long, then you can defect. If this is happening, this is what a party member can do, and this is what a party member cannot do. If these are some of the tiny, tiny, tiny details that are problems that are missing in our constitution, that whether we like it or not has become a problem and have made the constitution, be it our electoral laws, be it our the general constitution, these tiny things that are missing in the constitution that over the years have been a problem is the reason we are where we are now. So do we have our lawmakers ready to sit down and pay attention to these details? I don't think so. We are so comfortable with the constitution that we are seeing the gaps and we are seeing the excesses that is putting on in the problem that we are now, and we are not ready to fix it, because you know what, we are comfortable with going to the appeal court tomorrow and then them saying that the FCT is not that important anymore. Why are we, what are, I mean, Sele, if we would look at this thing, truly our constitution is also a problem in the country. And do we have lawmakers that are ready to make these changes? I don't think they are yet, but I hope that they wake up and see that, do you know what, there is work needed, and a constitution guides a country. The constitution literally is what keeps a country its standard, because nobody is above that law. But when you see the constitution not up to standard, that is what I'm going to put it as, with a lot of excesses that has been a problem over years, then it tells you that, you know what, you need to fix this thing and you need to work. There are details that are missing in our constitution that needs to be captured. There are laws for certain things that we are not making, that we need to make laws for those things, and we are not. So yes, our constitution needs a lot of work to be done, and I just hope that our lawmakers wake up and do that.
Well, if they're going to scrap it, that means, Rachel, from January or whenever they come back from the break, because if Reps is planning on passing the 2024 budget 30th of December, they should be going for recess, some rest. We should be seeing a fresh 2024 constitution, not 1999 constitution reviewed or whatever. But I still stand by my, even though I totally agree with you. I mean, there are things that are happening and there are details that sometimes the law do not interpret, and that is why we have the judiciary to actually interpret some of this law that have been made by the House over the years. But then I still stand on the fact that, Rachel, we have stubborn people that just choose to be, to do things that when it favors them, all right, but when it doesn't. And no one, I mean, we had when even Obasanjo said, maybe democracy is not for us. Because of issues like this, you begin to wonder, I mean, over the years, things have been going well. People have been obeying. What happened to the present generation? What happened to the present leaders that choose to do things when it's okay and not okay? Well, we just hope to see what will happen eventually, whether the advice coming from Robert Clark will actually be taken. Still a New Telegraph newspaper, we spent 2.4 billion naira to win Kwara Imo Ogun Guba in 2019. Coming from Oshoma, that says no APC National Working Committee has spent as much during election. Detail of that can be found on page 3. Anti-party activities, we will sanction Wiki and others at appropriate time, coming from PDP. And then the question will be, when is that appropriate time? Nnamdi Kanu has accepted Supreme Court judgment stopping his release. This is coming from the lawyer, so it's obvious he will be spending the Christmas in prison. And then coming from Edo State, I have been denied 6 months entitlement as deputy governor, says Shaibu. You can find more of that also on page 28. And we have a study to cap the paper that says Toothbrushing in hospital linked to shorter admission. So if you do not want to be admitted for either tooth decay or whatever it is, you can do well to read more of that study on page 7, and that's all on New Telegraph newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, we have federal government to disburse 75 billion naira loans to small businesses in January. Couple trafficked 1-month-old baby purchased for 30,000 naira. Federal government to partner UNESCO counter-terrorists in rural areas. This is coming from Malagi, and this is on community radio. You can find details on page 7. Fubara Wike, 25 lawmakers and others. PDP threatens Tinubu's peace accord, insists on fresh polls. More sanction against FCT minister, orders over anti-party. I'm ready to pay any price for peace, coming from Rivers Governor. We stand by President's peace deal, coming from APC. Total Energies signed deal with NNPCL, pledges $6 billion investment. Cash scarcity bites harder in Lagos, Ogun, and major cities. Urban renewal infrastructure top bagels 613.2 billion naira 2024 budget. 2024 will fully unveil gains of federal government reforms, coming from Tinubu, and Nigerians are more eager than you, Mr. President. We can't wait to see what your reforms will mean to us by 2024. And that's all news on Blueprint newspaper.
The Nigerian Standard, we have Mutfwan urges citizens to be selfless. You can find more of that story on page 10. NUJ commended for holding Northern Christmas Carol, and we have doctors seek legislature to address organ trafficking. It seems to be a problem, and we have seen and they are calling on legislation to actually address that, and we hope that will be addressed. You can find more of what they have to say on page 2. Coexist in peace to pave way for development, coming from the CSO and CEO. You can find that on page 10. Tinubu pledges to uphold media freedom. We saw that from yesterday when he met with them on Monday. You can find more detail of that inside the paper. Nigeria rectifies new policy to deepen inclusive education. You can find more in the paper. Nigeria inflation to rise high in December. You can start reading on the front page and continue on page 1. And that's all on the Nigerian Standard newspaper.
On Sweet Crude report, 700 megawatt Zungeru hydropower plant to commence operation this year, coming from Minister. The big story, Nati indicts Chevron, Owando, 5 others over regulatory breach. NUPRC and MDPRA to enforce domestic crude oil supply. NCDMB rejects 328 expatriate workers' requests from oil firms in 12 months, and that's all the news on Sweet Crude reports.
All right, let's take a look at the Business Day newspaper. The big story here saying Netherlands overtakes India's Nigerian biggest oil buyer. You can find more of that inside the paper. How Tango slipped through regulatory gap to defraud investors. And we have Rivers crisis. PDP rejects Tinubu's intervention, insists defector seat vacant. Elumelu firms throws other large caps in stock returns. You can find more detail of that inside the paper. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Punch Sports Extra, the big story, the Foxy fellas in the NHL spearheading Leicester immediate Premier League return. Okocha, my best player, coming from Kudos. You can find details on page 7. Nice give update on injured Murphy. Usman calls for Chimef rematch. NPFL keepers must compete for Eagles spot. This is ahead of the CAF, and we have 24 days to go. Saudi offers for Casemiro. Don't expect Nkunkun to save Chelsea, coming from Pochettino. And we have Adekuroye I's first Olympic medal. Eze Chukwu, Nigeria's new sprint sensation. Onana unhappy with United start. You can find details on page 4. And we have government boxings. Olo gets new Ghanaian foe. Adeyinka upbeat ahead Okoya Thomas Cup final. You can find details on page 2. And that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Well, that's how far we can go in the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for
You're
doing
welcome,
this.
Stella.
And thank you to our viewers and supporters at home for always keeping a date with us on this program. Until we come again, do have a blessed day ahead.